Hey, friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Co-Regulated Canines podcast. I hope you've been enjoying this season so far. I know I have. This has been a dream come true to meet so many brilliant people in this space and to bring these conversations to you all. So, thank you again. It means the world that you're here. And I also had some exciting news. So, a lot of you have let me know that you were interested in this guide that I have been working on. It's something that I feel like is missing from the training world and even from my work with one on one clients. I feel like I haven't put as cohesive of a guide together, going into more of the human mental health pieces that can really help us stay calm and grounded when our dogs are losing it, so to speak. So, lo and behold, my official guide is here and it's free and it's ready for you all. I'm going to link it in the show notes. But this guide will walk you through just some simple steps. This isn't going to be a training protocol. It's not, this is what to do to your dog. It's really about how you can plan ahead, stay grounded, some breathing exercises that work for first responders going through crises. And I also use them when I'm working with challenging dogs or in any moment really that I'm feeling my nervous system get activated. And then also giving you some tools on how to kind of like regroup after a walk or what to do, in the midst of your dog having this hard time. So again, not a training protocol, but I really hope it'll give you some tools to feel more confident and at ease with your dog that might also have big feelings. And if this eases the load just for at least one of you, let me know. I'd love to hear it. And without further ado, I'm excited to introduce you to today's topic with a very special guest, Karishma Warr. We're going to be diving into how coercion can be sometimes used in dog training, especially in positive reinforcement dog training. No one hardly ever talks about it. Coercion can be present in all forms of dog training, but it's a lot more subtle and sneaky in the R plus world that we call it. So I think you're going to learn a lot, and I encourage you to just go into this conversation with an open mind, see what you can learn, take what lands, leave the rest, try some things out, and don't shame yourself if you've accidentally done some of these things. Me and Karishma both have, and I'm sure continue to do accidentally sometimes. And it's just about bringing your awareness to the issue. All right, enjoy. Hey friends, and welcome to the Co-Regulated Canines podcast. I'm Ashley Cipoletti, your host, and I'm on a mission to create more connection. Dogs are really just the starting point. Together, we'll explore how to live with more harmony, ease, and healing so we can show up more as the best version of ourselves, not just for our dogs, but also for our community and our planet too. So grab a coffee and let's dive in. I'm here with Karishma Warr to dive into a topic not many people think about when it comes to their training, and that's how coercion can pop up, even when we're using positive reinforcement. And Karishma is a dog trainer and behavior expert who specializes in complex cases involving anxiety, fear, and frustration. So, Karishma, welcome to the show. It's nice to have you
Thank you
here.
so much for having me. I'm very excited to discuss one of my favorite topics, which is coercion in reinforcement-based training. And it's one of those topics that I think it's been popping up a bit more recently in the social media world. So let's dive in because this is the time.
Yeah, I agree. And before we dive in, just to introduce you to our listeners, would you mind just sharing a little bit about yourself and how you got into specializing more sensitive or complex dogs?
Yeah, so I've been working now as a dog trainer and behavior consultant maybe 10 years almost. I'm coming up on the 10 years, about 9 and a bit years. And I started working in New York City, in Manhattan, and I was there for 3 or 4 years in a brick and mortar dog training institution, running around town, training dogs all day. And at some point, sort of moved into the online space and started working with more complex and specific cases. So I work with a lot of dogs that have what I call behavior bingo. So it's just all the problems.
I
Separation
love that.
anxiety, reactivity issues, social triggers like people, issues with dogs, Maybe they have phobias of noises, thunderstorms. On top of that, they're handling sensitive. Oh, yes. And also they have hip dysplasia. Those are my guys.
Hmm.
Those are my guys. And they're very sensitive. They tend to be sensitive and sometimes quite powerful as well, because a lot of these dogs are of breed types or breed mixes that are highly specialized. So we're talking,
Hmm.
a lot of herding breeds, retrieving and hunting breeds, muscly dogs, powerful dogs. And this intersection of the behavior bingo dog, who's also very powerful, is where I really love to live. And we have to be
Mm.
very careful with these dogs because they are some of the hardest. They're the cases that in my beginning years, people would say, oh, that dog can't be trained with reinforcement-based training. And
Hmm.
that's where I live now. I love those dogs. And I like
Hmm.
showing how we can do it this way and how we can actually make real transformation with them.
I love that. And don't you have one of your own dogs that I feel like I've seen
Oh,
on social
yes.
media that's has some
I
complex
have.
behaviors?
I have my spokesperson, my poodle Hera. So he's my first dog, my heart dog. He is 8 years old now, and
Oh.
is a behavior bingo dog. He's had pretty much every challenge other than separation anxiety. He's like, get the fuck out, leave me alone. It's everything else that he struggled with, and he he really taught me how much I didn't understand about reinforcement and about coercion, because everything that worked with a lot of other dogs did not work with him. And I
Mm.
had this big arc with Hero where he got worse and worse and worse until he was about 4 years old. And I think of it as him going, he was like revolting against the previous ways that I used to train. He was going, no,
Mm.
this will not do. And he kind of forced me to change a lot of stuff around the 4 year mark. And he's 8 now, so we spent 4 years now in the new world, in the new way that we communicate, and he is ridiculous. Like, he's a completely different dog. He proved me wrong in so many ways because I would say, oh, he's not the sort of dog who can do this, and then he goes and does it, and I'm like, damn,
Wow.
okay. And I think his journey has been very public because I've been on social media this whole time, so people were there 5 years ago when he wouldn't eat food from my hand, or when
Mm.
he peed himself when a truck went past. And now they see him crushing life. And he's been the one, as is the case so frequently, he's the one who like showed me the way.
Hmm.
He's the best. I also have three stepkids
Oh
who are
yeah.
equally kind of powerful and sensitive and amazing. And one of them's behind me here. This is Rhea.
Oh,
She's an
so
Icelandic
cute.
sheepdog. Yes. And then we have two border collies who are in the other room with my partner.
Wow. Yeah, you got your hands full. This will make you
Oh yeah.
extra skilled, especially in the multi-dog household with multi-sensitive dogs in the same house.
Well, I've been playing this game for years, so I've lived in multi-dog households with Hera for 5 years now. And so
Wow.
that was a big part of our journey, was how do we figure this out with another group of other equally sensitive and complex dogs? And it's made me very good. And also really I understand like what these guardians go through on a day-to-day basis. Like I've been in the trenches,
Yeah.
I like to show everything to people as well so that people can see what it like, even we deal with these same challenges.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I think everyone thinks as trainers, it's like, oh, you don't have any challenges with dogs. It's like, no, this is still tough, even when you know theoretically what to do.
Yeah, I'm constantly humbled as well. Like I'm
Yeah.
constantly having to rewrite and go, oh, I was wrong about that. Whoops.
Well, I love, and I feel like that naturally flows into our main topic. So, in case anyone listening isn't familiar with the term coercion, would you
Yes.
mind sharing your explanation or your definition?
Yeah. We love to start with a little definition. And to me, coercion, I mean, the technical definition is a persuasion that involves force or threats. So it's trying to change behavior of another individual. And we use tactics that relate to force or threat to change that behavior. And I think that force is obvious to the point that force free is a term that is very commonly used. We have moved away from force as
Hmm.
a species. Well, maybe not looking at the political landscape, but theoretically, there are a lot of people who understand that we shouldn't be physically hurting or physically invading an animal's space using our physical force over them. We try to avoid that as much as we can. And I feel like R plus land, like the land of reinforcement-based training, understand that. But threats and social pressure are subtle. And I think if we peel back communication, we peel back, okay, don't hurt someone, don't hit someone, don't push someone to the ground. Cool. And then we go a little bit deeper and we go, okay, so there are other ways that we can force, that we can threaten, that we can coerce that aren't as obvious. And a lot of that, I think, has been investigated recently in the social landscape in regards to like consent and intimacy dynamics in humans. And I use that a lot as an explanation. We know that we shouldn't be physically forcing ourselves on anyone ever. And maybe in the last 50 years or so, more of a conversation has developed around, well, what if someone's very intoxicated? How does that affect the power dynamic? Okay, what about now the person is your boss and they're trying to change your behavior. They're trying to, you know, move on you in ways and get you to do things that you're unsure of. The landscape and the power dynamics that are at play affect how our communication is accepted and experienced by the individual. And I think that acknowledging the power dynamics and our privilege with our dogs within the topics of reinforcement-based training, this is the next step, because we are the boss, right? We are the boss. We control everything. And we have dogs in our homes who we have bred and designed to be obsessed with the things that we have control over. And so for me, it's not just about using reinforcement and reinforcement-based training. It's like one step further. It's like collaborative and kind and fair. And I think sometimes we don't always achieve that in our reinforcement-based training. And I can dive more in, but that's my coercion kind of like intro.
No, you spoke about that beautifully. And so how, I guess we'll kind of go into this in a little more detail. So how would positive reinforcement training that's being coercive differ from if you're like, I'm using more balanced methods, or more like it's like outwardly punishment based methods?
Oh, well, now we're entering a whole very complicated situation because I am very nerdy about ethics. I have a master's degree in analytical ethics, which is essentially where you not reduce, deduce ethical questions into math formula and then figure out, literally what's more aversive would be a question that I would have asked in my master's degree. And it's almost
Cool.
impossible to give you the answer. I don't know whether a prong collar is more aversive to X dog than you insisting that they do something they really don't want to do to get the ball, that they would die for that ball. I think that there are different animals who would give you different interpretations of how that's experienced. I don't know, but what I do know is that one of the big ways that we can accident, like I think of three ways actually, like three kind of categories that I see coercion popping up in with reinforcement-based training. And a lot of these are also present in other kind of camps, training camps, in different ways. The big one for me that I always start with is deprivation, right? And we've seen obvious versions of this, big obvious versions where people withhold food so that the dog is starving, so that they then train with the food. Or I've seen people withhold water. I've seen people withhold freedom to get off the bed. They have to stay on the place for 6 hours. Deprivation to me means that we have this basic set of needs. And to me, these animals have personhood. They are people and they have a right to dignity, to water, and this is political too, right? Like I believe that all creatures have these basic rights, and a lot of the time we are making our dogs work for these basic things. If they're only being fed when they're training, if they're only allowed to get a cuddle when they obey the command, this worries me because we have these dogs who are captive animals. They cannot meet their own needs. They are unable to go off and just fulfill their needs themselves. We physically stop them from doing that. And so to me, we have to meet their needs first. And I think we're developing this conversation as an industry of what are these needs, what are their rights essentially. And
Mhm.
I mean, their property legally, they have no rights. Spiritually, ethically, socially, I think a lot of us think differently. And so trying to train an animal who has not gone for a walk this week, trying to teach a dog, a young adolescent staffy who's mouthing and jumping to be still, but that animal hasn't played with another dog in its life.
Mhm.
You know, that these are, we don't always think of it as coercion. You know, if I come into a behavior case and someone says to me, this dog is biting my kid, it's very common for a behavior trainer to go, okay, well, let's fix the problem. The first thing I do is I audit the dog's life and I go, okay, what are we missing here? Because we're always missing multiple things. And we have to start there before we start trying to train them to change their behavior. So to me, deprivation is huge. It's present in a lot of like abusive training kind of methodologies, but it's
Mhm.
also present in the kind of R plus reinforcement based sectors too. I think often deprivation has to do with the lack of resources, you know,
Yeah.
like we don't have the money, the time, the natural spaces. And so I think a lot of us kind of go, oh, well, we can't fix that. Well, that's our job.
Yeah.
Like you can't just shy away from it because it's difficult, you know? And so I think that's one big thing that I'd say like welfare based bottom up training where your foundations need to be solid. Is the nutrition good? Does the dog have the movement that it needs? Do they have the freedoms that they need? Do they get the unconditional affection and love that leads to secure attachment? That's where we start. And I just see a lot
Mhm.
of people bulldozing through that and going straight to training a behavior. And I think I don't really think of it like there's balanced and force free. I think of it like a kind of three-dimensional spectrum. When we
Mhm.
get deep into ethics, you realize that it's never a binary, it's always more complex. And I
Yes.
think that we see elements of deprivation popping up all over the spectrum. And a big part of that, like I said, is because of the lack of resources. And I actually lean into that problem. I don't shy away from it. I like to talk about it with my guardians who I work with and say, this is the problem. The problem is that you don't have access to a park because you live
Mhm.
in central Chicago and you're working 6 days a week. You know what I mean? So I'm not blaming anyone. I don't blame anyone when I say that animals are deprived and captive. I just like to be realistic
Yeah,
about
well,
their
it's
needs.
true. Yeah, it's true, and I think that's where I get the most resistance too, and I find, like, I just kinda always mention it every time I see it. I'm like, "Oh, see, like, this high energy they're having is usually coming from a dog's needs not being met socially, physically, whatever that might be for the individual, it's gonna change."
Yeah.
And I feel like I get a lot of pushback of, "Oh, okay, yeah, but, then it's work, then it's this," and recognizing that that's very true. We have our own limited bandwidth, and also recognizing, like you said, it'd be really unfair to be like, I expect my dog to hold a forced place or be put in a crate the whole day when they're bursting at the seams for months and months and months on end. You're going to have a hyperactive
Yes.
dog. So I completely agree. And I feel like that is a more subtle way of thinking about it. And I don't know if I've ever in my head thought that that was coercion technically, but it is in that way. And if we were training in a way we must get the behavior, and their needs
Mhm.
aren't met, that is unfair.
Yeah, and it's coercion because in many cases we are asking them to do something that they actually can't do. We're not providing them with what they need to do the thing, but we are lauding the power that we have over them. And it is coercion if a dog isn't fed properly. It is
Mhm.
coercive if I say, if you look at that dog, I'll give you this cookie.
Mhm.
And we think we're positively counter conditioning the trigger of the dog by adding food. But if the dog is starving, which I see frequently actually,
Mm.
we're in a
Ugh.
negative reinforcement contingency. They're trying to avoid the starvation. They're not trying to access food. We're not in an R plus contingency. We're actually in a
Mhm.
whole different set of, we're in a deprivation contingency that they're trying to get out of constantly. And we're trying to then apply our reinforcement on top of that. And that's not how it works. And yeah, I think that there's a lot of times where people will say, okay, so the dog can't ever get the toy until they do the thing I want them to do, which is, I don't know, downstay, or I want you to walk past this scary thing, and then you get the thing. If that dog doesn't have access to the things they need, it's coercion. Like you absolutely
Right.
are in a position where you're coercing them. And I guess this leads me to my next one. So we have deprivation as a big category. Oh, actually, one more thing about deprivation that I missed,
Sure.
sorry, which is really important, is healthcare deprivation.
Mm.
And this is a problem for the humans, first off. So the fact that we have to fix this with our dogs is laughable. Sometimes I say to people, we need to
Mhm.
go to the vet, we need to go to a specialist, and they go, I don't even have healthcare. Trump just removed my healthcare, they say to
Right.
me. And
Yeah.
I go, well, yeah, we're in a bit of a sticky situation now, aren't we?
Yeah.
Like it's no one's fault. I'm not blaming anyone, but a lot of the dogs that I see coming through my clinic, 80% plus have undiagnosed health conditions,
Hmm.
gastrointestinal issues, enteropathies, musculoskeletal challenges, teeth that are rotting in their mouth, thyroid conditions, cancer. I've found 6 bullets embedded in dogs' bodies that they didn't
Wow.
know were there over my 10-year career. And I think that there's a deprivation of healthcare, honestly, for a lot of these dogs. And it's normalized because we don't get healthcare. So why would they? But
Hmm.
it's still a problem. I'm going to say it's a problem because if 80% of the dogs who are coming through my clinic have medical issues, I'm often the fourth or fifth person people see. So 4 or 5 people miss that. And that's a real problem to me. So the deprivation piece is huge. And I think really importantly, no one's fault. We're talking about structural issues. But you mentioned like your clients struggle with this and sometimes you get pushback. I coach a
Hmm.
lot of trainers and behavior consultants in the behavior consulting skills that I use to help clients who feel like they can't do these things. How do we get them from there to actually being able to get the dog to the vet or to go and drive to get them out in nature? And for me, I do not proceed with a behavior plan until the foundation is laid. So if I'm saying to a client, this dog needs to be walked for 45 minutes off leash every day, minimum, and it's not happening, I gatekeep the rest of the plan. They don't get the next
Hmm.
step.
Hmm.
They don't, because it's the same thing as training a dog. If I'm training a dog to retrieve and they can't bring the toy to my hand, I'm not going to chuck it in a field and ask them
Right.
to go and get it for me. I'm going to break it down. I'm going to wait until the first criteria is met, and then I add difficulty on top. And I do the same thing with my clients. And the reason is because coercion leads to poor outcomes. And I don't like poor outcomes. I like to be successful in my training. I don't
Yeah.
enjoy my work unless I get results. And I pride myself on getting results. And so I say to them, unless we figure this piece out, you are not going to get the result you want. And
Right.
what do we need? So if you can't take them for 45 minutes every day, can you do it once this week? What day is
Hmm.
it? What time is it? That's your only homework this week. Once you achieve that, we will move on to the next thing. And so there are skills that we can use, just like with the dogs, to help the humans access really quite challenging things sometimes because of the societies that we live in. But this is the first place that I go, a welfare first approach that looks at the whole dog, the whole body, the whole mind, the body mind of the dog,
Hmm.
and make sure that they are fulfilled. I actually have a framework that I use called the HEAL framework, which breaks this into 4 categories and has like sub points about in each category what do we need to check off, because I've done this 1,000 times and I am a
Yeah.
pattern recognition machine. But that's literally how important that this is to me, this kind of foundation piece.
It is. And I feel like we might have chatted a little bit about this like on Instagram or something before, but I have like health issues. I'm pretty transparent about that to my audience. And I feel like in my own body, I can feel when I don't feel good or don't have energy or I have pain. If I am to go to like a corporate job, which is partly why I was excited to leave corporate America, was because I was like, that is so hard for me to do that. And it's an invisible thing. People can't see what's going on. And then I always think about this with dogs and I never rule it out because I'm like, we can't ever really know their experience. And like maybe they have their days that are tougher than others. Or I get curious too about like even like nutrient deficiencies. It's not my specialty, but I've noticed it in myself. And I'm like, how food impacts my own mood and behavior. And I'm like, imagine if you just felt like you had a thirst that could not be quenched. And and you're like being expected to do all of these things, it would drive you mad.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Absolutely. And there are some cases that I worked where, there have been many years and we haven't figured out what the health issue is yet. And we've looked and looked and we can't find it. And I always say to them, like, I know when there is a health issue present. And what
Hmm.
I know is that I can't find it yet. And it turns up at some point in their dog's life, just like with us. I also have chronic health issues. We've definitely talked about this before, and we share
Hmm.
some experiences.
Hmm.
And I've had the same experience with my life where I've like been something's wrong, and everyone's been like, no, you're fine, no, you're fine, no, you're fine. And then after 10 years, they go, oh, it's this,
Yeah,
right?
same.
I've had
Yeah.
that experience with dogs too. I have a client right now that I'm working with. She's a little Chihuahua pit bull mix, and she's had on and off, like, she's been telling us that something is wrong with her body for years. And other trainers have tried, we haven't found anything. And this year, we found mineral deposits in her bladder. And
Mm.
we had been looking in the wrong place. We'd been seeing a curved spine. I'd noticed like what looked like lower back pain, and we'd been searching. And finally, we found bladder issues actually being the root cause. And it took years to figure this out. And so sometimes people are like, oh no, we've been checked by the vet and everything's fine.
Hmm.
Or I've seen a trainer and the trainer said that everything should be fine with the dog. They like, we can start training. And I'm always like, we're going to double, triple, quadruple check that.
Yeah.
And it's a journey sometimes, honestly. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, because it's my own similar experience too. I'm like, can't can count on so many hands of how many times doctors are like, "You look fine, everything's good." I'm like, I don't feel good, and I know something's up. So it can be frustrating.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
totally.
so you mentioned your categories. That you had three.
Mhm.
Let's
There
dive
are
into the
two
other
more.
two.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
deprivation is the first one. The second one we have is high stakes, and I'll swing back and dive into that. But the third is authoritarian. So these are just three kind of, I think of them as categories or kind of ways that this shows up. And the high stakes one is really interesting to me, especially working with the kind of dogs that I work with. So I have a poodle, two border collies. My like work wife and I co-raised a Sportline Staffordshire Bull Terrier together for many years. I often find myself working with breeds of dogs that have been bred to be biddable for certain jobs, right? So my poodle would kill a man for a ball. He'd kill him dead. He'd kill his best friend. He doesn't. He's like, throw the ball. I don't care. The
Hmm.
Staffordshire Bull Terrier, he was bred to be tenacious and to push through adversity to achieve and to. And the Border Collies were bred to need to work with human beings for long periods of time. They're desperate for our affection. It's actually kind of pathetic. I say all the
Mm.
time, I'm like, get a life, guys. Like, you guys are too obsessed with us. There's a form of genetic coercion at the base with all dogs because we have strategically bred them to do the things we want to do more.
Hmm.
There are not many other animals who will sit down, roll over, bow, sit pretty, please, can I have the cookie? Some of them just want to be told they're good. That's not normal. Not
Yeah.
found in nature. That's a human design. And I think that sometimes when I was training before with Hira, I made him obsessed with the ball. I was taught to make him obsessed with working with me for food and to build engagement and to build drive. And what that meant is I used the principles of behavior and learning that I understood to make him abnormally reliable when it comes to if I pull the ball out, there could literally be a bomb going off over there. And this dog would chase that ball. And I think a lot of us go, wow, amazing. What a good dog trainer. I would get here, and he was scared of so many things at the beginning. And I was taught to build this food, build this toy, these toys, and then get him out around the things that he feels overwhelmed about and get him working for those reinforcers. And at the time, I was told we'll be counter conditioning to those scary things, to the cars and the dogs and the people that he's scared of. I actually find more often than not, what ends up happening is the dog is going, I'm desperate for that reinforcer. I'm desperate for it. Please, can I have it? And I go, walk closer to the scary thing. And they go, okay, I'll do it. I'll do it. Give it to me. Give it to me. Give it to me. And he would do what I said. But when I removed the ball and removed the food, he'd go back to being anxious. He'd go back to
Hmm.
being fearful. And he was fine-ish most of the time, and then sometimes he wasn't fine. And I see this as a result so frequently with reinforcement-based training, or with all dog training, actually. The result is a dog who's just hanging in there to get the contrived outcome that we are providing for them, right? So Hero would, actually, I have a border collie that I knew in New York who would go to Central Park and play fetch with the chucket over and over and over again. And one day he just bit someone out of nowhere. And people were like, he's so excited and happy. Why did he bite someone? And I was like, he was not excited and happy. He was desperate. He was desperate to do that thing with you that is the best thing that happens all day. He gets it for 20 minutes and then he's in a box for the rest of the day. And he walked through fire, which was the crowds of people to get to that. And one day you paused for too long, you checked your phone, and he realized that there was a monster there and he bit it. And then he went back to playing the game with you. And I think that lots of people go, what the hell's that? And I say, that's coercion. That's a dog who has been manipulated into being so motivated for something. And then we've used that to control their behavior without checking in with how they feel underneath. When you put that chucket away, he starts getting worried about what's going on.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of us think that we're doing counter conditioning, but actually, we are putting our dogs in high stakes situations with these life or death reinforcers. That's Sarah Stremming came up with that quote. My wife, and she's
Mhm.
also works with a lot of these dogs, and she uses this term life or death reinforcers. And I think, have you ever met a dog like that? Where they would
Yeah.
like throw themselves off a cliff for the
Oh, yeah.
frisbee, right?
I see it all the
And
time,
then
the
I
high drive, especially. Yeah. Yeah.
right. And how many of those high drive dogs like bite out of nowhere
And they're like
or
pumped usually
suddenly out of
full of adrenaline. Yeah, where they're like just like little
yeah,
adrenaline junkies.
they're little adrenaline junkies. We are using behavior mechanisms that we understand are incredibly powerful. And then we're trying to apply these reinforcers like we would apply, I don't know, like code to a machine and
Right.
expect them to feel differently. And from my experience, I've actually removed all high stakes reinforcers from my therapy work with dogs. When I'm
That's
dealing with
amazing.
fear, especially, if some people come to me, they go, she's so food motivated, it's going to be great. I go, yeah, put it away. If we're using food, we're using cucumber. We're using something so boring that they're not going to put themselves in situations that they're uncomfortable with in order to gain that outcome. This happens to people all the time, right? Like, how
Yeah.
many of us have put ourselves in a social situation that we're just not comfortable with because we want an outcome that is so important to us and maybe even damaged ourselves as a result in order to get there? Like, it's not unusual, it's something that happens all the time. um
hmm
so I think a lot about like what are we using to manipulate their behavior. And I want our dogs to be working. I was taught like, you know, get pay your dogs $1,000, pay your employees really, really well, you know, pay them $1,000 and then they'll do really good work for you. And I've actually shifted with the dogs and I go, I give them their money. They get
hmm
their money. It's a capitalism to socialism shift. You don't have to work for your basic needs. I will provide you with a basic universal income. And then that will
hmm
make you happy. And then I will work on our relationship and your feelings of safety. And usually, a shift like that, I see the most radical transformation through that shift, where I go to Hira, you don't have to look at the scary dog and get a cookie. I have no
hmm
food on me. How far away do you need to be comfortable?
Yeah, I love that because I feel like this is similar to what I've been. The more I train, the more I've been leaning in this direction of like doing a little bit less. And it reminds me kind of Grisha Stewart's like newer bat type of training. I don't know if you're familiar with it too, but I feel like she keeps re-editing it and doing like less and less of the training pieces and more of like what's the
Yes.
distance we need to be at and because then you get the real root of how they're feeling without influencing.
You get the truth. If your boss
Mhm.
says, hey, do you like me? You
Mhm.
go, hell yeah, I love you. You're great. You're funny. You're smart. You're a great boss. If they stop being in charge of your paycheck, they go, hey, do you like me? I might go, you're a bit condescending, actually.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, you could get a
And
little bit
that's
more
what
of
I
that truth.
want. I want the truth. And so with Hero, for the first 4 years of his life, I built him up to be obsessed with these reinforcers. And then I used these reinforcers to control his behavior in situations where he was overwhelmed. And at age 4, he would not eat food from my hand. If I brought out a toy, he would start getting worried. What is it? Where's the thing?
Mm.
What are you going to try and make me do? And he didn't like me. He did everything I asked him to do, but he didn't sleep with me at night.
Yeah.
And he didn't go belly up for me and go touch my belly and fall asleep. He was like my employee, literally.
Mm.
And at age 4, I had tried so hard and I'd ruined his relationship with all of these reinforcers. And I can talk more about that. But I changed everything and I went, okay, no food, no toys. How far away do you need to be? And I went from being able to walk this dog in a focused heel down Manhattan streets to him needing to be 100 feet away from dogs and
Mm.
he'd still be worried. And it felt like going backwards, but actually it was a step forward because I found our true starting point
Yeah.
without the coercion. And I do this with all my clients. They come in and they go, separation anxiety. They go, the dog will eat a stuffed Kong for 10 minutes while I leave. And then they panic, but it's fine. 10 minutes of alone time. And I go, oh,
Mm.
no, no, no. We're going to get rid of that Kong full of hot dogs. And then we realize that the dog can barely handle 2 seconds alone. And I go, and this is where the true starting point is. And we'll start here because this is how we can actually get success.
Yeah, and from like an analyzing data standpoint, that starting point is so necessary because then you can track where you're going and where you're headed and if things are effective or not. Yeah, it's fascinating. And when you were talking to it, reminded me of that like Spider-Man quote of like, with great power comes great responsibility of like as trainers. I'm like, we have because we know how to
Literally,
apply these sciences, like we have to really take the
there is,
responsibility.
I was so problematic in those first 4 years of training because I knew just enough. And I know people like this, they know just enough therapy lingo to weaponize it, right?
Yes. Oh,
I was
yes.
that person, but Hera was the victim. My dog was a victim
Mm.
in that situation. I was going, I'm counter conditioning to this stimulus through stimulus pairing, antecedent behavior
Mhm.
consequence. I was saying all of these words, and he was going, I'm overwhelmed, but I'm desperate for that ball. So can you just throw it, please? What the fuck's that behind me?
Yeah, especially
Right?
for the really complex dogs, I feel like it's important for all, but I feel like even more because I feel like they do have more of the obsession of whatever it is that is their thing genetically. And
Yep.
I can totally see that with that archetype more than with the dogs that are a little bit, I don't know the right language, but
Well,
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
dogs who we would call low drive, this isn't
Right,
as much of a problem, right? Like for
right.
example, I lived with a Romanian street dog for many years. She was a free living dog in Romania for many years. She was brought to London. You know, you can't coerce that dog. She's like, fuck you. Right? She's
My
like,
dog's like
I've been
that too.
free. She's like, I know what freedom is like. Well, a lot of the kind of wolfier dogs and more
Yeah,
primitive type breeds are like that. They go,
they're
fuck
my
you.
type.
But you
Yeah.
say to Spaniel, I have a sweet
Yes.
corn kernel, and they'll go, I'll do anything for that sweet corn
Yeah.
kernel. Literally, what is it you need me to do? So breed makes a
Yes.
big difference here.
So much.
As does
Yeah.
like their learning history, right? Like there are some dogs, especially in the sport world, that we raise these dogs to be obsessed with us, right? Like a lot of the sort of
Mhm.
Susan Garrett style, agility style, or sport dog style puppy raising is about making them think that you control everything and you're in charge and they have to do everything to kind of, you are the king, you're the god. The free living
Mhm.
dogs, they know we're not God. They know we are just some random person. Emily, the former free living dog, she lived on her own for years. She knows
Mhm.
that I don't actually hold the power to everything. And so it's harder to convince her. But with the sport bred border collie, we say with great power comes great responsibility. My girlfriend wife, she our youngest 2-year-old border collie Carson was bred to do agility. She was bred to do sports, and she is one of the fastest moving, fastest thinking, and fastest feeling dogs I've ever met. She
Mm.
flickers between being thrilled and then anticipating and then terrified and then furious and then happy. And we breed these dogs for intensity. in order for them to solve problems, right? So border terriers bred to rat and bred to do that independently of humans and
Mm-hmm.
bred to be little bastards, honestly,
Mm-hmm.
and to be
Mm-hmm.
obsessed with killing things and really motivated to do that. And then we lord that over them. And anyway, so this high stakes thing, I'm blabbering a bit, but the high
I
stakes
love
thing,
it though.
especially when it comes to some breeds, I think are really, really, really significant. Um,
Yeah, it was a mic drop moment, I think, when you were saying like genetic coercion, because it's something I've
mhm,
thought for a long time. And I've always personally not enjoyed playing fetch with fetch obsessed dogs and like won't. And when people are like, not like
feels
in a
weird, right?
training, yeah, not necessarily in a training context, but in my personal life. And everyone's like, oh,
Yeah.
like here's the dog that shows up to the beach volleyball courts and they're just like obsessed with the ball and they're like, can't
Mhm.
stop. I'm like, I don't really want to be a part of this. I don't know. I just like have never loved
Well,
it.
I'm wondering, let's look at it through the lens. Like, why is that dog so obsessed with this? Right? I bet that there are things in the deprivation category for that dog. I bet there's a health issue. There's
Hmm.
often some sort of health issue in dogs that are obsessed with playing high velocity games. Not all the time, but often. It's many different mechanisms at play, but one of them is to do with adrenaline being a pain reliever,
Hmm.
and things like that. So often I would be looking into what is that dog's health like, and then I'd think, okay, what does this dog's day look like? Because a lot of these dogs are in a house for 8 hours, and then they go out and they play these games, and then they're
Yeah.
kind of back in the house for 8 hours. And these dogs are not meant to live like that. And that's how we live. That's human life. But when Emily was free living in Romania, she spent 8 hours looking for food slowly
Right.
over about a 2 mile perimeter. And she was never playing repetitive fetch. And I think that sometimes I look at their weeks and I go, oh, okay, so we need to change a lot about this. And then once we change the routines, those behaviors go away. So basically, yeah, it's like this you have to really investigate what's become so normalized in our society, right? Like it's so normal
Yeah.
for us to have fetch obsessed dogs who would we literally breed certain breeds to be food obsessed, like Labradors
Yeah.
are literally bred to be more into food. How is that not coercive, like to some degree? Like
Right.
there are no other species who are, doing what these dogs do, right? Like,
Yeah.
why is it? Who does it serve that they're like this? Is a question that I always ask. Like, who's the master here? Like, who is the one who's benefiting from this? It's not them, I don't
Yeah.
think. Um,
And
and I guess that moves on
yeah.
us onto the last little category, which is the authoritarian category. And for me, this is political and sociological. It's like, how do we perceive animals? And I mentioned at the beginning,
Mhm.
like, I believe dogs have personhood, meaning that the rights that I would afford to a human, I actually personally afford them all to the animals too. Some people think that's radical and absurd, but
Mhm.
that's my personal opinion. I think that they have complex, deep emotional lives. I think that they are far smarter than we think. And even if they weren't, I still think they deserve personhood because who the fuck are we to
Mhm.
say that you need to have emotions and complex thought to have
To
dignity?
matter.
That's just
Yeah.
that need to matter. Exactly, exactly. They don't have to be like us to matter, right?
Couldn't
So for
agree more.
me,
Yeah.
right, and I think a lot of people in our world agree with that, but outside of our world, I think that's actually kind of foreign in a lot of spheres. And I think it's normal
100%.
for people, yeah, it's normal for people to think, I command, you obey, you know? And that's how our
Hmm.
communication system is. And it's I say things and you do what I say. And of course, that's incredibly unreasonable expectations to have, as well as unfair and unkind. And I think we can quickly fall into I'm big, you're small, I'm right, you're wrong kind of kind of place with our dogs, and that's present a lot in more obviously coercive training methods. In R plus worlds, I think we try to make them want to do what we say. I think a lot of the times we go, how do I get the dog to always want to do what I say?
Hmm.
Uh, and someone said this to me the other day. They were like, I think it was ADHD. They're like, I'm struggling with my ADHD. So how do I train my dog to always do this for me? And I went, well, you can't get yourself to always do something for you. So why are we expecting them to always do something for you? They're not robots. They're not machines, right? And I think
Hmm.
that sometimes, even in R plus worlds, we still think about the science of training as this kind of like remote that we can use to program the animal. The other day, what was it? There were three dogs in my parents' house, and they were all asking for cookies. And one of them was like, I want the cookie, you gave it to him. And my dad went, You're a dog trainer. Why can't you train them to not be jealous? And I went, oh, wow, okay. I went, whoa, there's a lot to unpack there, Father. That's authoritarianism, right? That's a
Yes.
make them not do that, you know? And he's a lovely man. Honestly, he is. This is
Yeah.
conditioning, right? It's not him being problematic or messed up. It's just the way that we're raised.
We all have it.
So I
Yeah.
think,
I I've even
yeah.
noticed like in my own like this was maybe a month ago, I was working with a dog client one-on-one. And I noticed even just like asking the dog to sit in different like spaces in the house, you got a different response. I was like, oh, I'm curious of this. But partly when I first started, I was like I found myself getting frustrated from a behavior lens of like, why isn't this happening when it's like the same, flooring and this and that? And I had to check myself. This was like happening in the scope of one session. Like my brain was just thinking like this. And
Yeah.
then I had to be like, why does the dog need to sit? Like, who cares? And so then just looking at, can I teach them in a different way? And my brain's just going a mile a minute. And I feel for clients because I feel like they're seeing like a lot of this stuff on social media and trying to replicate it and then getting like frustrated. And sometimes it's worth just being like, who cares? Actually, does the dog need to do this or why? Or,
Oh,
and digging deeper into
so
that.
big. So big. So I think this is another piece. We can go even deeper, right? So the
Mhm.
next level of the authoritarianism is maybe we don't think that we lord over them, but we can't handle them diverting from our agenda.
Mhm.
So, for example, cooperative care training, I see this all the time. Cooperative care training, they've seen that, you need the dog to opt in, and then you clip the nail and then you give them the cookie and then you're reinforcing it and it's a choice and it's consent. And then I watch the videos and I see the dogs going, I don't know, I'm not sure about this. And then we see the human going, well, would you do it for a hot dog? And the dog's going,
Mm.
I guess kind of ish. And what's happening is a lack of attunement. We're not being necessarily authoritarian in the sense that we're violently above them, but we are not attuned to their emotions and their needs. Sarah Stremming did a great podcast about this recently, about how often we just kind of steamroll over our dogs with the agenda that we have for the training session or for the day. Right. So when
Mhm.
Hero was younger, I'd be like, we're going to the farmer's market and then to the park and we're going to have a picnic and then we're going to walk home. And we'd be at the farmer's market and he'd say, I have a funny tummy. I don't want to be here. I'm hot. And I'd go, farmer's market, then a picnic in the park, then we're walking home. And I needed to listen to him and stop trying to get him to do what I want him to do because of my agenda. And instead just see what he needs and respond appropriately.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we provide our dogs with like almost a false choice. We're like, aren't you so lucky? I've got cookies and we're going to the farmer's market and then we're going to go for a picnic. And the dog's like, I don't really want to do this. I don't feel great. And we're like, here's some bacon. Do you want to come with the ball? Come on. And the dog's like, I don't know
Yeah.
about this. It's a form of emotional steamrolling and a form of like social pressure. Like these dogs know what we want them to do. And they know that we want them to follow us and walk down the street, and there's already this, they want to please us, in many cases. I really do think that's the case. I see it over and over
Yeah.
again. And so I see this all the time. It's like a kind of, it's lack of clear communication more than anything
Mhm.
else, and it's a lack of like the human reading the dog and vice versa. It's just the human has made the decision and this is what we're doing. And there has to be
Mhm.
this back and forth. And I think the
Yeah.
last piece around that is like, there's been the last layer that I'll unfold for myself anyway, is that there's been a big push towards, the dogs should always have choice. The dogs should always be opting in, and the dogs should always be, uh, we see the training sessions, like you said, where someone's training their dog around something that they're scared of, and then we have this assumption this is how it should look. And I think a lot of times we try to make unpleasant things pleasant for the dogs. And to me, that's a form of authoritarianism because it's saying, this is good. You should be
Mhm.
sitting now. Why aren't you
Mhm.
sitting? This should be a good experience for you. And then I see it all the time where we try to lure the dog closer to the scary thing. We try to make it good for them. And a lot of the times with my clients, I'm going, no, this sucks. They're going to the vet. They're going to get something stuck in their ass. It's going to
Mhm.
hurt. They're going to put some, it's not going to be fun for them. Stop trying to make it fun. And I think that there's this kind of like, um, how do we be a kind leader without being an overlord? Like we are in a position of
Mhm.
power, right? Like I'm not going to lie to my dog and be like, this is a collaborative situation. No, it's not. I literally own you legally. Like,
Mhm.
so how do I communicate with you that no, you don't have a choice right now? And be honest with you about that rather than trying to trick you into doing what I want you to do in a collaborative way so that I feel better about it. That is one of the things that changed with me and Hira so much is that he'd be out on a walk and he'd be scared and he'd go, oh my God, I'm so scared. And I'd go, cookies. And he'd look at
Mhm.
me like, what is wrong with you? And it was,
Like, I don't want to eat right now.
he's like, there's a monster over there. What's wrong with you? And when I stopped trying to change it, and instead I just went, that sucks. I'm so sorry. Are you okay? Honestly, the change that I saw in him, he was like, finally, you actually listening to me. Yeah, it sucks. I don't want to play with a fucking cookie right now. This is
Mm.
awful. And I think sometimes we accidentally emotionally steamroll them trying to change it, trying to make everything okay. And it's like, oh, my mum's like one of my dogs is dying. He's got lymphoma and he's in palliative care. And I was explaining to my mum the things that were hard about it, and she was going, well, you're just really lucky that this has happened, that you have all of these good things, and you're in this place that's really good for it. She was like trying to make it good, and I was like,
Yeah.
no, it's okay. It can be shit. Like it's better to be attuned in this moment than for you to have to kind of come in above me and go, well, no, everything's fine.
Mm.
Or you should be sitting right now. This is
Yeah,
fun.
it's like just so much discomfort with uncomfortable feelings that we have. And then I think too, as trainers, I think the one of the benefits of doing online training is you don't feel as much of the pressure to get the behavior like now. And I think when you're in there going in person, you feel this invisible pressure of like, okay, I'm here for the in-person session, needing to get teach everybody something. And sometimes the dog's like, I'm hot and I'm full and my tummy hurts. And you're like, okay, we're not getting that done today.
Oh, so you're saying that when you're in a training scenario with clients who have given you money, that you feel like your behavior is somewhat manipulated and you're not being honest and truthful with them all the time?
Yeah,
Imagine.
that's so funny. Yeah, right? And you're like, "Wow, there's even that contingency there," which I never thought of. Yeah, where you're like, I feel like I
Right.
this, like, invisible pressure. Yeah, which that's a good
Coercion
point.
trickles down from the top, right?
Mhm.
Like the coercion that we feel to make behavior progress happen quickly, it often comes from a well-meaning guardian who doesn't understand, or those people who have the power, the money, the people who have the money usually are the people who
Mhm.
are doing this. I had a trainer who worked with me for a while, and she is brilliant, and she left a training institution that was very coercive in the way they treated the people, and she moved to work with me, and she would be telling me about her clients and going, I'm sorry, it's not really happening fast enough. Like I'm trying to make the behavior change happen quickly. And I would go to her, babe, chill out. Like take your time, go slower, because I know that if you lower the stakes, if you focus on making sure there's no deprivation, and if you focus on the relationship being secure rather than authoritarian, I know that the change will come in time. But she'd been in this environment of urgency and of commodity. Where's the results? Where's the money? And it
Mm.
fucks up our ability to make good decisions and to connect with each other. That's why capitalism is bad, right? Because there's a blanket of coercion over everything that we do, to the point that literally when I was first taught with reinforcement-based training, they said your dog has a paycheck. They work for their paycheck just like you do. And I would teach
Mm.
that to clients. And now I go, fuck the paycheck, universal income. Everyone has a basic set of needs that they should get. And that's actually better off for everybody because coercion leads to poor behavior outcomes. And the dogs that come to see me who have seen 4 or 5 trainers, the reason it hasn't worked is because of something in one of these categories. They're deprived in some way. There's a high stakes situations that are being set up that are fucking with them, or there's an authoritarian relationship which is affecting the animal's ability to actually connect with you. And
Mm.
coercion leads to and creates conflict and stress. I really do believe that. And I think that there's a lot that we need to do as an industry in regards to body language understanding, because for me, emotions are part of the criteria, right? Like if I'm training a behavior, if I'm teaching a dog to walk on a loose leash, the criteria is not they're at my side and the leash is loose. The criteria is they have relaxed muscles. The commissures, their lips are not too retracted. If they are panting, it's because of the heat, not because of stress. They're
Yeah.
taking food gently. They'll work for the lowest value food that I have. These are all parts of the criteria that I set up for the dogs. And I think that that's how one of the ways for me, the main ways that we can move beyond this as an industry is by really investigating, for me, the video footage. This is how I learned this. I watched video footage of me and my dog that I filmed everything and I watched it back and I watched it back over and over again. And I started to go, oh fuck, I didn't notice that.
Mm-hmm.
When I started to go, oh, I didn't see that moment there. And I'd send it to friends and they'd go, did you notice that? And I go, shit, I didn't notice that. Oh my God. And it was this like humbling, like relearning of the
Yeah.
situation. And I think that if anyone is interested in this and in learning more about this, um, if you're a guardian, a really good practitioner, you really need someone who is able to talk about these concepts fluently and who understands the common pitfalls. And if you're a dog trainer or behavior consultant, find a mentor who can really help you and work with you on this. Uh, I think everyone should be in a constant learning state when
Yes.
we're doing this work, right? And it's a rebirth over and over again. It's where you go, oh, I was wrong
Mm-hmm.
about that, next, and that, and that. And every year I'm doing that over and over again. And I'm
Yeah. The
excited for the industry to get on board with this stuff.
Yeah, no, I feel like it's a constant evolution in the industry. And I see this even in your own personal development. It's like, this isn't just like, oh, I did it and like now we're good. It's like, let's get curious. There's more to unpack. How do we continue to improve and evolve like indefinitely as a species,
Yeah,
even, you know? And
yeah.
yeah, and I think too, videotaping, you get so many of those good nuggets of like, oh my gosh, like I didn't catch that. And I always tell my clients
Mhm.
that too. I'm like, if you videotape yourself, you will learn more from watching you than like you would from even me telling you all those things. And I could guide you through it, but even I feel like we can see it in ourselves of like, oh, look at that difference in body language right there that I missed. And it's
I
beautiful.
like genuinely believe that watching yourself back is necessary. I feel like sometimes I will tell guardians things, I will say to them, this is a principle that is true. And they go, sure, nice. But until I actually take them through those steps physically, they don't fully digest the message, right? So I can say to someone, time in nature is really important for your dog. Okay, so just make sure that you add that in this week to the plan. Or I say, this week, all we have to do is get Fluffy out in nature for 45 minutes. Can you do that twice this week? What days is it going to be? And then Fluffy comes back and I get a message and they go, Fluffy didn't bark at any noises today. And I go, there you
Mm.
go. Time in nature is healing. Like there's a
Hmm.
difference between me saying that to you and you experiencing it yourself. And I want the humans to experience this yourself, experience it yourself, not just be told, because I feel like being told these things is almost like us just like speaking to the dog and being like, I'm going to say sit, and then you're going to put your bum on the floor, and then I'm going to give you a cookie. Okay.
Yeah.
Did you get
Yes.
it?
Very
Like,
similar. Yeah.
they need to go through the motions in order to actually learn the lessons. And so it's just like a part of having those reasonable expectations, I think, of the people and the dogs, is that they all have the same processes that we go through to
Yeah.
learn, right?
Yes, yes, and while you were chatting, earlier about like some breed types and how like some of them like love attention, it reminded me of a story I had with a client that I thought was kind of fascinating. And this one dog would kind of like jump and mouth and like get really, really pushy and like whatever language you want to use, if you can picture that. And the mouthing would get more and more intense. And if his owners like yelled at him, he would stop and then sit and then do that for like a cookie. And then it weirdly turned into this like
It's a game.
pattern, of that. And then I
Hmm.
felt like I also noticed he would do things that he knew were quote unquote like naughty to be told, hey, that's not right, do this to get information and
Hmm.
wanting to connect with people and not knowing how. So it's interesting when I watched that unfold and unpacking the layers of like he's really had this social deprivation in a way of like I really want to connect and like I just don't know how, and this is how like a big giant pity connects, is I'm just going to launch my body at you and get really mouthy and
Yeah.
excited. And it was just interesting where I had to actually cut back on the food, where I was like, no, look, food is becoming a part of this equation. And at first I went right
It
into
was
the food
too
and I was
high.
like,
It was too high stakes for him. For
yeah,
him, that food was actually, he wanted it so much that he was thinking the whole time, how do I make the food happen? How do I make the food happen? He was desperate for the food. And
yeah,
then we are not really in a reinforcement contingency. He is uncomfortable because he knows the food is present and he doesn't know how to access it. And he's trying to relieve his discomfort. And I think a
yeah,
lot of the time we think we have a good thing, so it's reinforcement.
right,
And that's just not how the quadrants work. But more than that, we can move away from the quadrants ultimately when discussing these things, because the quadrants can be useful in some ways, but we can also just talk about this from like a human perspective. We don't talk about the quadrants when we're talking about this with each other. When I'm discussing
right.
coercion in relation to intimacy and consent, I don't go, is it reinforcement plus or negative? No, I just go
Hmm.
like, well, that's fucked up. Right? Like we know. And I say this as, like I said, analytical ethics. I can get nerdy about this if we want to, but we don't need to have an effective discussion about it. And I think that these three things, it's deprivation, you've got these high stakes scenarios, and you've got this authoritarian way of thinking. And I just want everyone to just really peel back the layers here, because I know that I'm only just starting my journey here, right? Like I know that in a year and 2 years, if we come back to have this conversation again, I'll be like, Ashley, I was so wrong. I was wrong
Yeah,
about everything. I
I
will. And so I
I
want
it's
everyone
so
else to be
true.
there with us. Yeah.
Yeah, when I look back on some of my old social media posts, I'm like, oh my God. Even sometimes just, when you have to try and get things into short form content, like we were chatting about before we recorded, it's like sometimes I'm like, well, wait, what? And how could this be, taken? But I hope people like when they are listening to this walk away with just like, that curiosity of what could really be going on here? What would happen if, yeah, we removed the reinforcer we're trying to use? Like what behavior is present and what might that be indicating? And playing around with some things and removing the shame too. Cause I think as we evolve and learn, it takes us making mistakes sometimes and doing things. And we're like, wow, we got a totally different outcome. So it's like being
Mhm.
curious, but not so like paralyzed of a fear of like, I don't want to do the wrong thing, but this balance of just playing around, try it out and get curious. And if you feel like something's having a not so positive effect, let's unpack it and
Yeah.
yeah, just be willing to try.
Yeah, so that's absolutely a great place to kind of finish up, which is that like I've been, I tried so hard with Hero over the first 4 years, and I made so many mistakes that were really damaging in ways that are quite extreme. And I know that because I've worked with lots of different dogs. Like I know that a dog starving himself to the point of vomiting is abnormal. But we were there with him, right? And I could have spent the next 4 years beating myself up about all the things that I did wrong with him. And bearing in mind, I never hurt him, I never corrected him, I never, did anything overtly aversive. But the
Mhm.
coercion that was present in my relationship with him was so aversive that it had these really negative effects. I could have really beat myself up. And instead, I went, okay, I clearly have not got this right. So I'm going to listen to the dog because he seems to be the one who knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, they
And,
always do.
right. And then, like you said, I spent a good year and a half just filming our walks, watching them back, filming training sessions, watching them back. All of this was actually for social media at the time. It went for my work, so I had incentive. And I say that to people like I say this to my clients all the time. You can't break the dog. Like people are always so worried. And I'm like,
Mm.
the healing that is possible is incredible. Like I would never have believed that mine and Hero's relationship could turn around in the way that it did. And so if you have made mistakes and you're feeling like internal feelings that make you want to just not think about it, like lean into it because that's actually where the change happens. You found your starting point. That's what I would
Mm.
say. Like you found your
Mhm.
starting point and it's a bit uncomfortable, but this is actually the next step forward. So lean in, believe in the power of doing this a different way, believe that it can work. And honestly, the things that you can achieve are incredible, really amazing.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And if people want to learn more from you, work with you, whether they're pet guardians or pet trainers, where should they find you?
Yes. So I am mostly on social media on Instagram. So you can find me at Transform Behavior, and behavior is spelled the American way, OR. Transform Behavior on Instagram, on YouTube, and transformbehavior.com for a website. But the websites are in, don't go there. Go to YouTube and Instagram and follow us there. And you can learn more. You can see more about how this looks when applied in real time, because I put a lot of content up with the visuals because I'm a very visual learner. I need to see this. Like, what does it
Yeah.
look like? So that's where you can find some of that.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much. I feel like this is just really good at planting some seeds in people's minds. And even if we looked back at training 20 years ago, I doubt anyone was having a conversation this in depth about coercion and positive reinforcement. So, again, a good reminder that we're always evolving. And I'm sure 20 years from now, we'll look back on things and be like, oh my God. So, it's a
Yep.
continuous process.
Yeah, that you have to get used to being wrong, because we're wrong a whole bunch.
Thanks for hanging out with me on the Co-Regulated Canines podcast. If you love this episode, it would mean the world to me if you subscribed, left a review, and shared with a friend. Your support helps more people and their dogs find a little more ease and connection in their lives. Want to dive deeper? Follow me on Instagram at Co-Regulated Canines. That's CO_regulated, the letter K, the number 9, S, or head to www.coregulatedcanines.com for more resources. Until next time, take care of yourself, take care of your pup, and keep building those connections.